You may have heard it said that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, which is to say that aesthetic judgments, judgments about the value of art, are subjective. If somebody asks which is better, Da Vinci's Mona Lisa or Van Gogh's Sunflowers, there isn't really an objective correct answer to that, the way that there's an objective correct answer to, say, a scientific or mathematical question. Someone might say, I like pop music, and somebody else prefers dubstep. Somebody might like poetry, and somebody else prefers dance. Somebody might say they like Herman Melville, and somebody else prefers Mark Twain, and that's all fine, whatever floats your boat. Whether or not you like a work of art is to do with a relation between the work of art and the person, and every person is different, so every judgment will be different. Art, in all of its forms, is subjective. Right? But although we say that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, certain aesthetic judgments just seem objectively wrong. Like if I was to say that Stephenie Meyer is a better author than Shakespeare, I mean, whatever you think of Meyer's writing, surely it can't beat The Bard. Or if I were to say that Sharknado is a better film than Citizen Kane, I mean, that just seems wrong. Furthermore, we don't act like art is entirely subjective, because when somebody asks you what you think of a work of art, you give reasons for what you think. You don't just say, I like it, or I don't like it, and leave it at that. You say things like, I liked the use of juxtaposition, or I liked the use of colours, or the pacing was off and there were too many tracking shots, or the screenplay was just so dumb. God! In other words, you point to facts about the work and claim they are aesthetically relevant. In fact, there is a whole industry built around trying to give objective, reasoned critiques of works of art. As an interesting side note, the one form of artistic expression which, in my experience, lots of people do think is 100% subjective is stand-up comedy. I've been doing stand-up for a few years now, and people get upset when I say things like certain comics are better than certain others. They say as long as it makes you laugh, then it's all totally equal. And I'm like, no, it's not. Certain comics are technically better than certain others, and you should not be laughing at certain others. I mean, nobody would say that every horror film which scares you even a little bit is totally equal, so I don't know why people think that stand-up comedy admits of no objective technical criticism. Anyway, comedy rant aside, there does seem to be a bit of a tension between the idea that beauty is in the eye of the beholder and the reality of the way we judge art, and Kant called this tension the antinomy of taste. Now, viewers who are familiar with Kant will be unsurprised to learn that he used this as a jumping off point to develop a very weird and complex system of aesthetic judgment, because Kant couldn't even order breakfast in the morning without developing a complex and weird system about the numinal status of bacon and eggs. But an interesting and elegant solution was proposed by our old friend David Hume. Suppose two people disagree on which is better, Stephenie Meyer or William Shakespeare. What do? Well, Hume says we do the same thing we always do when we think we have a disagreement about an apparent matter of fact. We ask an expert. In his essay on the standard of taste, free link in the description, Hume tries to put forward a list of criteria that somebody must fulfill in order to be considered the ideal critic, somebody capable of acting as an artistic judge with the final word in any aesthetic dispute. So, let's have a look at the list. The ideal critic must have delicacy of taste. The ideal art critic must be able to look at a work of art and see all the details, take it all in, not miss anything. We can objectively test whether somebody has delicate enough taste by asking them questions about features of the work of art that we observed. So for example, if we say, what did you think about that little tree in the corner? And they say, what tree in the corner? Then that might indicate that their taste is not delicate enough. Practice. The critic must have an experienced eye, and that might mean seeing the same work of art multiple times, or it might mean seeing lots of different works of art and judging those. Exactly how much practice it takes to become an ideal critic might seem like a subjective matter, which is a problem because we're going for objectivity here. But potential critics who have way more than just enough practice will be obvious. Whenever there's a grey area, people at either extremes of that grey area will be pretty clear. Comparisons. The critic mustn't just be practiced at viewing one work of art. If you've seen the same production of Les Miserables 200 times but you've never seen anything else, then you're not really in a position to say whether or not that's any good. At the very least, you need to see somebody else do the show, or maybe see some other musicals and compare them. Again, exactly how many comparisons you need to make might seem like a bit of a grey area, but again, people at either extremes of that grey area will likely be pretty obvious. no prejudice, and this one is a bit more of a problem. It's a matter of extreme debate how much you need to remove yourself from your own personal values when judging a work of art. For instance, if you got mugged by J.J. Abrams, then it's obvious that you might not judge the new Star Wars films to be particularly good, but we can also see how that's not really relevant to the question of whether or not they are. But should you overlook the ethical and personal concerns behind, say, the Nazi propaganda film The Eternal Jew? Presumably you have a personal and moral distaste for the Nazis and what they were trying to do with that film, but should that affect your judgment of it as a piece of film? We saw this most recently with Ender's Game. People were saying that it should be boycotted because of the homophobic and transphobic views of its creator. Exactly what counts as personal prejudice and what counts as relevant context is quite difficult to say. Good sense. This one is a little bit more nebulous. Hume seems to use it to mean an awareness of yourself and also what the work of art is trying to do. So it's knowing whether you have any prejudices and whether you have enough practice and delicacy of taste and comparisons, but also knowing what the themes of the work are, what it's trying to get across, what's its message. This can be a problem because it can be difficult to determine whether somebody is actually aware of their own strengths and weaknesses as a critic, and it can be difficult to know what the themes of a work of art definitively are. Consider something like Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot, which people have interpreted very variously in text at least, although Beckett himself was always notoriously stum as to what the play was really about, and the Beckett estate is very controlling of the way in which it is allowed to be performed. So Hume has some good ideas about resolving the antinomy of taste, but some of them seem to be a little weak. But we need to remember the most important thing here. Hume isn't saying that there really is an objective correct answer which only the ideal critic can access. He still thinks artistic judgments are subjective. He's offering us a means for judging judgment. He's trying to solve the Stephenie Meyer Shakespeare situation. So it's not the case that there really is a correct answer here. Hume's just saying that we have reasons to prefer certain opinions over certain others, particularly when they come from ideal critics with those 5 attributes. What do you guys think? How would you resolve the antinomy of taste? Is Hume onto something here with his model of the ideal critic? Does he leave out any features which you think the ideal critic should have? Send me your questions, comments, queries and comebacks underneath the video on Facebook, Twitter or by email. Next time you guys are going to help me revise for my metaphysics exam, so the next episode could either be about is time real or do alternate realities exist? Subscribe to join the Philosophans, and you don't have to be an ideal critic to let me know that you enjoy the show by clicking the like button. I really enjoyed reading the comments underneath our last episode, or maybe someone else did and I just think I'm them. Let's see what the Philosophans had to say about personal identity. James Francesco and Borogov LM both said that maybe identity is an illusion, maybe we're fictionalists about identity. That's certainly a strategy you could go for. Fictionalism is becoming really popular in philosophy at the moment, especially in metaphysics. That's where we say that talk about a certain thing is like talk about fictional characters, so we can make true statements about it without actually being committed to their existence. Once you start being a fictionalist, it can be quite difficult to stop though, because it is such a good strategy. Some people have even suggested that we should be fictionalists about truth itself, which is kind of weird, but yeah, good comment. Bruno Solea absolutely hit the nail on the head and said that if you're not the same person as you were in the past, if there's no personal identity, then you can't be responsible for anything that you did, because that wasn't you, that was somebody else. Absolutely correct. That is one of the big problems and one of the things that motivates the discussion. Kyle Chapman came up with a very interesting way of thinking about identity in terms of asymmetric relations between sets. So you are identical to your younger self because the set of all your memories contains theirs, but they are not identical to you because their set doesn't contain yours. That's a very interesting strategy. I've never actually seen anyone do that before. Of course, if you are identical to your younger self but they are not identical to you, then it can't be numerical identity that we're actually talking about there, because numerical identity is transitive, remember. I think what you've done there is you've just framed what Parfit said about survival in terms of sets of memories, which is a cool thing to do. I've never seen anyone do that before, but it still means that we don't have numerical identity over time. Joshua Pearson said that surely Leibniz's law means that you are not the same person as you were 1 second ago because your properties have changed. Yes, it would seem to say that. You are correct, but the problem is that Leibniz's law is necessarily true. It cannot be false. So a lot of the philosophy of personal identity is trying to respond to that problem, or trying to argue that that's not really a problem. You are absolutely correct. That's all we've got time for this week. Thank you very much for watching. I've got exams coming up, so wish me luck, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye!